everyone, and welcome to another episode of Paved with Good Intentions, the show that asks the difficult questions you didn't think you cared about. And this episode is produced sponsor-free, so thank you for supporting independent artists. It's been a while, I know, and I will address that, but first I'm just going to get right into it because why not, you know? So, this episode is kind of a roundup of 2016, which for some of us was a little bit more hectic than we wanted it to be. And for a lot of us, it seemed a lot more dour than we were expecting it to be. But that's why I want to talk about it. I want to talk about both the bad and the good. The bad, there's a lot of it. And the good, there's also a lot of it. So we'll just hit some of the highlights and kind of put things into perspective a little bit. It's a safe bet that no matter who you are or where you are, 2016 was a rough year. Even if it wasn't personally bad, the events of the world around us have had an impact on our lives. Whether we like it or not, everything that's changing, everything that's happening, it's going to have a direct impact on us. And some things are bigger than others. And for many of us, the last few weeks or the last month and a half, 2 months, have been the most worrisome following the election of Donald Trump. Now, without getting too political about it, it's something that does worry me about the future. I know everyone's saying give him a chance, but nothing he has said or done has given me any hope that he knows what he's doing. But more than just the opinion of Donald Trump or Obama or any of that stuff is the fact that this long, incredibly painful election process was just emotionally draining. By the end of it, we all hated each other. And now we see some very bitter division to the point that we don't see our friends and family the same way we did before the election. Just knowing that someone you love and care about voted the other way than you is becoming a problem. And it's something that it's really disheartening because I don't want to look at somebody I care about and think, well, they voted for Donald Trump and now I am just sick to my stomach every time I think about that. But either way, I mean, it is what it is, and all we can do is those of us who didn't vote for him and see the problem are going to continue fighting, and those who did vote for him are just holding on to hope that maybe he can actually do what he promised to do, but he won't. But regardless, no matter what, we've also seen some very negative things come from it, and as soon as he was elected, we saw this rise in hate crimes and overt racism and bigotry, and that's not a good sign. Like, I don't like seeing swastikas in America just out and about. That is something that I will not tolerate, but we're seeing that. And it's especially hurtful because when you look at what President Obama did for civil rights over the years, a lot of people say he forgot about people, but what he was really trying to do was take the people who were marginalized and give them a little bit more support. I don't want to see that destroyed. I don't want to see gay rights go away. I don't want to see trans rights go away. I don't want to see Black Lives Matter go away because their whole purpose is to ensure that people recognize the violence and the institutional racism that still exists in this country. So there's a lot of stuff that he did and a lot of stuff that needs to stay in order for us to become a great country. I don't think we're a great country right now, especially with all the division. It's really hard to see the good in America when we all hate each other so much. But we can get there. We can. I believe we can. And this is definitely the election. Like, I could go on for an entire podcast, but I don't want to because everywhere I turn, they're talking about the election. Everywhere I look, it's something about Donald Trump. And I just cannot emotionally go there again or for an entire podcast. So I'm pretty much just going to leave it where it is and just say that the election, this is the biggest event for Americans. And for the rest of the world, it's going to have an impact. So it's not just for Americans. The rest of the world is going to be impacted by this, whether they like it or not, because they're looking at America and seeing what we did and saying, I don't, I don't know about that. But this is going to have a huge impact, and we're going to see, January 20th, we're going to see just where it begins. Don't have a lot of confidence, but it's going to definitely have a major impact over the next year and beyond. But enough about that. I don't want to talk about that dude anymore. But just outside of the United States and even within the United States, the political climate of the world is certainly looking frightening. We have North Korea continuing to do their crazy stuff. We have some tension between the United States and Russia, the United States and China. We have a lot of these just, conflicts coming up. Pakistan and India are still at it. Now you have Israel and Palestine continuing. It's just all of this stuff just seems to be escalating. And then you have one of the most tragic events of 2016 and continuing. It's not even just of 2016, it's something that's been going on for far too long without somebody doing something. And that's what's going on in places like Syria and Sudan, places that, people are being driven from their homes, people are being murdered. ISIL is still out there just absolutely terrorizing people. And as much as people in the United States fear ISIL and they think of just how bad and they worry about, ISIL's going to come and destroy all of us, really seem to forget that most of the victims of ISIL and the first victims are the people in those countries, in Iraq, in Iran, in Syria, in those places. And those people, they're good people. There's nothing wrong with them. But they're getting attacked. They're getting driven from their homes by these radicals. And it's terrifying and it's disheartening, and you wish there would be some compassion for the people who are being driven from their homes, and unfortunately you just don't see a lot of that. There's also been a number of terrorist attacks throughout the world. We looked at France. There was an attack in Nice. You look at Brussels, what happened with the bombings there. In Germany, another truck attack. This just happened recently where people were basically run over. There was another attack in Munich earlier as well. A gunman opened fire on a mall. So there's been terrorist attacks all over the place. And we look at Europe, and everybody gets up in arms when something happens in Europe, but there's these atrocities happening all over the world that no one bats an eye about. Syria, probably the biggest one, where people are just being murdered, and no one in this country is batting an eye because apparently Europeans matter more than somebody in Syria. But I'm not getting into that either, because this is all the nasty, dark, depressing stuff that is happening right now, and showing that we still have a long way to go. 2016 isn't the angel of death that we all like to make it out to be. It's something that's been going on, and we've all just been ignoring it. And then you have in the U.S., you have the rise in gun violence. You have the horrific tragedy that happened at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, where a number of gay men and individuals, other people who are just going out to have a good time, were killed by somebody who had, his own issues and just decided to take that out in violence. And very disturbing and just absolutely tragic. And, the effects of like the Charleston shooting, him being found guilty, thank God, but now it's like, what happens next? Now you have the question of the death penalty. Again, something I don't really want to get into because so much of this is just all the negative news. And one of the things that has made it even harder is the propagation of fake news. Social media makes it very easy to pass fake news because someone can post a headline that sounds great. It sounds real. All it takes is somebody picking that up, throwing it out there and saying, hey, everybody, check this out. This is what's happening. But if it's fake news, that's making things dangerous because then people start believing it. Look at what happened at the pizzeria in, I think it was Maryland, but basically the Comet Ping Pong Pizzeria, where somebody said that there was basically a story being passed around that there was a sex ring being run by Hillary Clinton there. So somebody showed up there with a gun. I mean, if you look at the story, it's ridiculous, but somebody did not think it was ridiculous and actually went there armed and put people's lives in danger because he wanted to be a hero. Fake news has a real consequence, and luckily people are starting to address that, but it's still something that's been propagated. And 2016, especially with the election, has just made that all the more prevalent. This was also one of the warmest years on record, and the threat of climate change is showing some real consequences, like dying honeybees. We're seeing a lot of honeybees who are dying, which I don't know if you know a lot about the role of bees, but they're important. They're important. So if they're dying, then eventually the die is going to be cast and a lot more things are going to start dying. and then people are going to start dying or starving. We've also seen some really extreme weather, like Hurricane Matthew, which hit the southeast, which, I mean, that's hurricane country, but it's still, no matter what, I mean, this was a devastating hurricane. We saw floods, saw all sorts of other things that really just, there's a lot of extreme weather going on, and a lot of that has to do with what climate change is bringing. And one of the things that people have really defined as why 2016 is so violent and so hateful is just the number of celebrities who have died. The end of 2015, Lemmy passed away, and that one hurt. But we've also seen a number of other celebrities pass away, including Prince, David Bowie, Alan Rickman. Like in the first week or two of January, we just had one after another of these, major stars, these beloved stars passing away. Gene Wilder passed away, Muhammad Ali, George Michael, that was a recent one, Arnold Palmer. And actually just in the last few days, there was George Michael, but we also lost Carrie Fisher. She had a heart attack on a plane and was taken to the hospital, and again, with the fake news, people said she was stable, but the reality was she was not, and she had ended up passing away. And then the very next day, her mother, Debbie Reynolds, died. She had a stroke and died, and that is just like that one hurts. It's because I mean I don't even know Debbie Reynolds that well, but it hurts to see this family tragedy hit so hard and so poignantly. But I mean, it's obviously not just celebrities who've lost people. There's so many other individuals who have passed away this year. But just when you see it, and when you, especially on social media, when people share it and say, here's another person who, another beloved person who's died, it really just highlights how, fragile things are and everything there. So we also saw the longest reigning king in the world die, King Bhumibol of Thailand. Now that one kind of hurts a little bit because, when I went to Thailand, I really saw the love and respect people had for the king. They might have hated each other for different political reasons, but the king was somebody that they absolutely loved. And you see that in murals, you see it in, the way people talk about the king. And so, he died at 88. So he had a very long run, I think 70 years on the throne. So it was a pretty good run. But he passed away too, so that was again another beloved individual dying in 2016. I keep joking about 2016 is going to kill us all. It's still got a couple days left when I'm recording this, so who knows? Maybe by the time I release this, it'll all be over. Who knows? But does that mean that 2016 really is worse than any other year? I mean, if you put all of this together, is 2016 worse? Not really. I mean, we can say it's worse just because we're seeing so much more, but that doesn't mean it is. I mean, it's a matter of perspective, and some of us are very worried about the future, so we say 2016 might be the beginning of the end. But you also look at, the people who died. Celebrities die all the time. And, especially in, there's always shocking deaths. Prince, that was a shocker. George Michael, that was especially a shocker. And then, of course, Carrie Fisher here recently. So a lot of these were, shocking, but then there are ones where it's like, well, we knew Gene Wilder was getting up there in age, Muhammad Ali as well. We knew that eventually Arnold Palmer was going to die. So, but it seemed like it was one after another. And it might be one because, as pop culture really became this huge thing in the 70s and the 80s, and these individuals really started to shine and become icons in our zeitgeist, then we started to think, as soon as they start dying, it's like, well, that it really makes people face their mortality, especially people from Gen X and, those generations. But no matter what, I mean, you can say that there have been a lot of very visible negative events that have collectively brought a lot of us down. So it's easy to say that 2016 is one of the worst years ever. It is, but it also isn't, because when you look at it, when you put it into perspective, things are getting better, and that's what I want to talk about next. Hopefully the dogs don't bark on this one. So I talked about all the bad, well, not even all, but a lot of really bad stuff that went on in 2016. But what about the good stuff? What about things to remember in 2016? And despite the many, many, many bad things that happened over the course of 2016, there were also some good things as well. And that's hard sometimes because when you only see the negative news, it's really hard to look on the bright side of life. It's hard to get that song stuck in your head and think, always look on the bright side of life. But there is always something good out there. There's always something you can find in the darkness. There's something good that you can cling on to. And a lot of it's personal. That's the thing, though, is the good news is not always as easy to pull out from the mainstream, but on a personal level, that's where you can usually find some good news. And I know for me, on a personal level, 2016 was kind of a mixed bag, but I can probably point to more positive things that happened than negative. So really, a lot of it comes down to how did you personally fare in 2016? But as negative as the news can be, there is always a wealth of heartwarming stories on social media. And not all of them involve animals, but a lot of them do. And, it might be one of the greatest inventions of mankind to have animal videos just popping up on your newsfeed. Because realistically, that's one of the greatest things ever. Animal videos are the best thing ever. And they always bring a smile to your face. Just today I watched a video of some penguin running into the water, and then as soon as the water came up and splashed him, he went flapping around. I mean, it was just it's so silly and so mundane, but at the same time it brings you up. It's cat videos, cats walking like people, or dogs doing funny stuff, or just any video of a sloth. That's always fun. Superman sloth. Those are things that can really lift you up. And I'm not talking really about news, I guess, but it's always good when you see all that negative on your news feed and then you see a video of, a horse or something like that doing something funny. You got to stand and watch because it just brings you up. But more than that, we also are seeing some positive things. Like, as much as the election was a nightmare for a lot of us, in some places it actually did work out. In North Carolina, Governor McCrory was ousted, thankfully, after he and his cronies passed a law restricting basically freedom of tax-paying individuals. And so the people of North Carolina told him what they thought of, him costing their state millions upon millions of dollars in the course of 6 months, essentially. So that was a good thing. We also have seen some efforts continue to slow poverty and hunger all over the world. We've seen some, as much as bad as climate change is, one thing we do know is that world leaders do recognize that threat, and they are committing to reducing carbon emissions. And like I said, there have been some civil rights victories, especially in the U.S., with trans people being allowed to serve in the military. The future of that, I don't know, but it's something that shows that there is promise, that there is progress. And this year also saw the continuation of some amazing pop culture creations. Pop culture is one of those things, you either love it or hate it, but no matter what, it's going to be a part of your life. And television shows, movies, music, video games, all that stuff, we all like to just throw it out and say, you should just go out into the world and do that. But you know what? It's something that can bring us together at the same time. Like, I personally really enjoy things that can bring us together. You can talk about a show or you can talk about a movie. Those are things, they're little things, but they kind of mean a lot in the long run. Because if you can connect with somebody, you might talk to somebody and be completely on opposite sides of the spectrum, politically, religiously, or any of that stuff. But then you start talking about, hey, did you watch the last episode of Game of Thrones? You can bet there's going to be some fun discussion there, because I watched the last episode of Game of Thrones and holy shit. And that was the thing, is this year had some fantastic television. Stranger Things, was this show on Netflix that a lot of people really got into. I enjoyed it. I wasn't as crazy about it as some people, but it was one of those that really, you saw some awesome fandom. BoJack Horseman, the new season, that one actually blew me away. Westworld, great show, HBO. Same thing, Game of Thrones, that last season was amazing. And sadly, it's going to end very soon, but at least they're really starting to pick things up. And the end of that season was insane. We also had some major blockbuster movies like Captain America Civil War and Rogue One that really were quality movies. They were fun. People enjoyed the hell out of them. Zootopia, that was another movie that I just absolutely loved. Kubo and the Two Strings, that was one I really wish more people had seen because it was remarkable. And actually, this, this is one that was really surprising. If you haven't seen the movie Moonlight, you really should. That is the first movie in probably 8 years, I think 8 years, that I've actually given a perfect rating to because it was that good. It is such a great movie. Go see it. Find it. I don't care. Watch it. And then we saw some video game revolution as well. We saw the growth of VR. VR is starting to become more and more of a thing. And while I haven't had a lot of experience with it myself, it's something that I know that people are really starting to get into and having a lot of fun with. And the future of that, I love the prospect of what they can do, as well as the prospect of AR, augmented reality. Whether or not it lasted very long, you really can't deny the impact of Pokemon Go. I didn't play it, but the impact of it was pretty clear, and it's pretty important actually what it did because it showed us that you can take a concept and put it into practice and people will just eat it up. And that AR concept is something that I would love to see more people do. Like I have my own idea for a great AR game, but I'm not a developer and I don't even have time to do podcasts, let alone come up with a video game. But it's really cool because what we saw can really move forward our technology and give us a lot of new, very cool games and things to do in the future. And then there was something for everyone when it comes to music. I don't know what the other stuff is. I'm sure there were some, pop and rap albums that people loved, but I do know that a lot of people did have some great stuff come out, enjoyed that. In metal, there were some really incredible releases. Personally, I think Winter's Gate is the best album that came out this year by Insomnium. Just flat out amazing album. So in pop culture, there's always something you can cling on to, even if it's something as stupid as the pineapple and pen. It's stupid, but it gets stuck in your head and you can't help but just, smile and laugh because, again, sometimes you just need that positivity. And even if it's, the pineapple and pen song, great, that'll do, I guess. And then in the sports world, there were also some pretty big moments. Peyton Manning ended his career with a Super Bowl ring, as ugly as that was. It was pretty cool. And I mean, I'm a Broncos fan, so I was happy about that, obviously. But it's good to see, anytime somebody, especially, somebody like Peyton Manning, who's had such a great career, can end his career on a high note like that. Again, it was an ugly game, but it was still a high note. He still won the Super Bowl. That's always a feel-good story. Cleveland, they saw the end to their championship drought. Like, the city of Cleveland has had a rough go. They have not won a championship since the 50s or 60s or something like that. I don't know exactly. But either way, they saw an end to their drought when the Cavaliers won in a surprising victory over Golden State. Like, they probably should not have won that series, but they did. And LeBron James delivered a ring to Cleveland. So that was a big thing to really get get them something. Let's not think about the Browns, but, the Cavs did well, so the Cleveland should be happy about that. And then the Cubs winning the World Series for the first time in over 100 years over Cleveland, but we'll forget that part. But, that was something that really brought people together, too, because it's like the Cubs have always been the butt of jokes of like, well, the lovable losers, they're never going to win a World Series. It's just going to keep screwing up, but they went in and they ended up winning. So I think it was a 7-game series, maybe? I don't know. I don't follow sports that closely, but I do know it's another one of those things that, can bring people together and tear them apart. But usually the positive stories are the ones that win over the day. Like I said, personal things are usually what you're going to point to as what made a year good or bad. Like the personal victories, the personal milestones, those are really what make or break a year. I know for me, I'd say more good happened than bad. I can't really point to a lot of bad events personally. Most of it is, there's been some issues with work and stuff like that. But, other than that, in my personal life, there really hasn't been anything that I can say is just negative. I published 3 books, which it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do this year. I wanted to do more. I actually was pretty much had a writer's block there for a few months, but I still got 3 books out, and one of them took about 2 years for me to finish editing. Shouldn't have taken that long, but it was again just I just wasn't focused on it. But I got it out finally, so yay! It's not that one. That one I wrote last year, and it's probably my favorite book that I've written. So you should check that one out, Elliot Knoll. Do that. I also went to a lot of concerts. In 2015, I started going to concerts again, and I went to a few big ones, but this year I just started going to pretty much any concert that came through that I could make. So I ended up going, I think, to 12 concerts in this year, 12, major concerts, not like local shows. So, I saw a lot of bands, some bands that I've never seen before, some bands that I have, some bands that just I wanted, I was curious about. And there was one show that I went for the opening band and ended up just falling in love with all 3 bands that were there. So, just had a lot of fun. I would say my favorites from the year would have been the Iron Maiden show. That was just remarkable. Sabaton was so much fun. And then Lamb of God at Red Rocks, even though it was at Red Rocks, just their set was so much fun. Lamb of God is such a great band to listen to. And doing the I Was There Last Night videos on YouTube were probably my favorite to create because it gave me a chance to bring some of what I enjoyed about that concert to the people, to let people actually, experience a little bit. I didn't want to record a whole concert or a whole song or anything like that, but I wanted to give people something to see. It's like, okay, this is what this concert was. And I could do a whole podcast about concerts and recording and stuff like that, and I might end up doing that. But it's one of those things where the way I see it is, yes, that experience is for the people who are there, but that doesn't mean that the people who aren't there or didn't have a chance to go there don't get some kind of taste, get a little experience from it. So I like doing those videos, and I think they've, they're probably my best videos on YouTube because people actually do like to see little clips of what happened at the concert, and it's enjoyable. But if you don't like metal, you're probably not going to like them. And then for me, I found a brand new obsession with, I'm not good at this, Ruby. Ruby is a show that I started watching last year, and my obsession went from just, it's like a show that I'm kind of curious about, want to, learn a little bit more about, and then it went into just complete and utter obsession. Like, it led to my first ever Comic-Con. I dressed as Blake from Ruby at Comic-Con, so it's like my obsession for that really took off, and I'm kind of glad it did because it's such a fun show. It's such a fun fandom to be a part of, and, it's just really enjoyable. So it gives me something to spend money on, I guess. So even though, I'm kind of rambling here, but even though 2016 had a number of bad events, there's still plenty of room to find the good things as well. It's mostly on the personal. You usually have to look at your own life for the positive, but it's there. You can find it, and you can find things that really did impact you positively in 2016. We are going to look back on this year with a lot of really negative emotions and say, I was there in 2016. I survived 2016. And we're probably going to have t-shirts that say that. But at the same time, there's also good things that you cannot forget. And it's those good things that are going to carry you forward. It's those good things that are going to be positive moving forward. And so hopefully you did have something good happen in 2016. And when you look at 2017, say, those are the good things. And I'm going to keep building on those because I want to continue feeling good about that. Tragedy is going to happen. It will. But that doesn't mean that you can't build on the good things that you do have control over and build on the things that you're passionate about. So a little parting advice. Always look forward. Even though 2016 was a mixed bag for a lot of us, some of us see more bad than good and vice versa. It really depends on who you are and what your situation is. But no matter what, we must continue to look forward. 2017 is a new opportunity. Now granted, years are arbitrary. We have our years based on lunar cycles and seasons and all this other stuff. That's how our calendar is. But every day is a new opportunity. Every year is a new opportunity. Every month, every moment, every second is a new opportunity. The past is done and gone. But we have the power to make a better future for ourselves and for those around us. Bad things are going to happen. That's life. But we can't let the bad things destroy the good things. We can't let the bad things distract us from the positive and what is good. And I might be saying that to somebody who is in a terrible situation, but that doesn't mean that even in a, really destitute situation that there isn't something you can find, something you can cling to. And maybe it's just working toward finding a way out of that destitution, maybe finding somebody who can help you out of that destitution. You never know. But all I know is that if you focus on the negative, everything is going to be negative. But if you focus on the positive, you can start to see the positive outshine the negative. Just remember, life is not defined by the space between New Year's days. Yes, a lot of things can happen in between January 1st, but that doesn't mean that your whole life is defined by what happened in 2016. And you're going to turn the clock back and say 2017 is going to be different, because in reality, it probably actually won't be. 2017 might be just as good or bad as 2016, but it's all up to you. It really is. Because life is defined by the moments we live each and every day. So just keep looking forward and stay vigilant for the opportunities in life that could end up being great memories that you will cherish for the rest of your lives. I know for me, I'm looking forward to 2017. I'm going to Finland in February, and that's something that I've really wanted to do for the past, I'd say, like 5 years. I don't know. I've wanted to go to Scandinavia for a long time, and I finally just decided I'm going to Finland. So sometimes all you have to do is just throw caution to the wind, say, you know what? I am going to do something for myself to bring positivity into my life somehow. However that is, I don't know. It could be going to Wendy's and getting a Frosty. That might be all it takes to bring a little bit of positivity into your life. It's entirely up to you, but just stay vigilant for those opportunities, or make your own opportunities. But you have to be vigilant, and you have to look forward. If you only look backwards, all you're going to see is the bad stuff. Or all you're going to see is the memories of things that were that won't be again. Always look forward. So at the beginning of this podcast, I mentioned that I was going to say something about the future of this podcast. So this has been a trying year because of a number of different things in my personal life, or it was mostly just that I focused on other things. But one of the things that really has suffered is my podcast production, as you probably have known. So the 5 of you who actually do listen to this probably are surprised that I'm still putting this show out. I love doing Paved with Good Intentions because for me it's a place where I can discuss a wide variety of subjects. I can talk about movies, I can talk about politics, I can talk about philosophy, I can talk about Wendy's. I might do a podcast about Wendy's. I don't know. Who knows? But it's fallen to the wayside because I've put my focus far more on my YouTube videos. Even my other podcast, Translation, has also suffered. And that one I'm trying to get out once a month, and I will do the same with Paved with Good Intentions. I'm going to try to do it once a month. And you're probably surprised that this is such a long one, but actually I'm going to most likely get rid of the separate podcast between the audio and the visual. They're both going to be the same one, so you're going to get all the content. So, sorry. Audio listeners are not special anymore. Sorry. But you'll still get the same stuff, and that's important. But I will try to get it out once a month, and the topics might be a little bit more pop culture focused, movies, music, video games, things like that, versus getting into some of the heavier political talk. I might do a philosophical one here and there because I do like just sitting there and thinking. That thinking guy, I like the way he rolls. But I will say this, my passion has not vanished, but my time has. I've got way too many irons in the fire, and I do this all by myself. So I kind of have to pick my battles, and unfortunately, Paved with Good Intentions is one that has suffered a little bit. But like I said, I'm going to make the effort to at least make it a once a month podcast. So Here's hoping, and if I don't hold to it, be sure to email me with some very harsh words. Appreciate it. So, that is all for this episode, but I shall return. Be sure to subscribe to Paved With Good Intentions on YouTube or on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher for all episodes, past and future. You can also check out the links below to my other podcasts, Translation, as well as my YouTube channel. And visit my webpage, dkessner.com, for all of my various works. And if you have any questions, comments, or a topic you want me to mull over, or if you want your voice on the podcast, send me an email at translationpodcast@gmail.com. I do want to hear from you and your unique perspectives. Again, this podcast is produced sponsor-free, so thank you for supporting independent artists. I'll see you on the other side.